Yo, what is going on, guys? So it was obviously a very busy afternoon in the NHL world. I went to go post my Tarasenko video, and then 3 trades basically happened simultaneously, being the Bowen Byram Mittelstadt deal, the Sean Walker deal, the Adam Henrique deal, and then obviously like an hour later, the Alex Wennberg deal went down. So I'm just gonna make this into one giant video instead of like 4 mini videos. We're just gonna steamroll through it for the most part. We're gonna start with the 2 Colorado deals because those are kind of like intertwined together for the most part. Like they clearly waited until they had both trades locked up. It wasn't like, oh, we made this deal, let's go do this. No, there was a clear path for both these trades to go down. Then we're gonna do the Wennberg, then we're gonna do the Adam Henrique. So without further ado, our first trade is Casey Mittelstadt heading to the Colorado Avalanche for Bowen Byram. Kind of came out of nowhere. There were some indications Bowen Byram wasn't at practice, but I think it was reported or fake reported or speculated that he was sick or something. But no, it was clearly because he was getting traded, and I really like this move for the Colorado Avalanche. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I switched my initial preseason Stanley Cup pick. It was the Colorado Avalanche, but when the second line center options kind of fell on their face, Ryan Johansson, Ross Colton, just no one could really fill that void that obviously has just been there since Nazem Kadri left back in 2022. I didn't give up on them, but I thought, oh, maybe the Dallas Stars would beat them just because they have that extreme depth. But they go out and get a guy like Casey Mittelstadt, who has only gotten better every single season, 19-40, then 59-82, and now 47-62. He is a solid 60 to 65 point guy, one of the better passers in the entire NHL. I don't think that he is the superstar, but I think considering what they were working at on the second line center, this is going to be fantastic. And now you kind of balance out the lines. I personally would throw Druin back on that first line and move Lehkonen back down. And once Nichushkin comes back, have Nichushkin be on Mittelstadt's right side, and then you have a really balanced scoring attack. I think a second line of Lehkonen, Mittelstadt, and Nichushkin would be a very good second line compared to maybe a month ago when it was looking pretty shaky. I don't think that the bottom 6 is very impressive, but they would, without a doubt, have one of the best top 6s in the entire NHL now, and that's not even with Landeskog potentially coming back. Kovalev, I believe Kovalev's the name of the guy, the Russian that has been carrying up the KHL that might come over for the playoffs. So now you look at the Colorado Avalanche, and we're going to get to the Walker deal to even boost their defense core, but their defense core was already very good. Now they have some elite forward core going forward. And in terms of Mittelstadt, this isn't really a rental deal. He's obviously a restricted free agent. And then we'll talk about it later again, getting rid of Johansson, his $4 million cap hit. That's going to be huge in terms of signing Mittelstadt. I think a 3 to 4 year deal around $5 to $6 million, kind of like another bridge deal. Take him to unrestricted free agency. Makes a lot of sense for both parties, and he's going to be an important part. Yes, it does suck to trade a guy like Bowen Byram. He had some flashes. The stats, the prior 2 years combined, 41 points in 72 games. It was looking like he was finally maybe emerging as a stud. Didn't really happen this season, but I still think for Buffalo, it's a solid trade. It's a solid trade overall. You get a potential guy that could be a very good top 4 forward. How it's going to work with their left-handed defensemen, obviously Power and Dahlin are also left-handed. Byram has played a lot on the right side. I don't really think it's his natural position. I think it's why he has struggled a little bit, but they can figure that out later. I think Buffalo needed a more so defenseman when looking at guys like Ostlund, Savoy, Kulich, Benson's on the team, Peterka's on the team, Quinn's on the team, but they're very young. They need more ice time. So instead of paying a guy like Mittelstadt, you more so balance out your team in terms of getting a young, promising, if he can stay healthy, if he can be consistent defenseman. So overall, a solid deal for both teams. I definitely think the Avalanche won it more because they got the far better player right now and they're in win now mode versus Buffalo struggling, taking kind of a shot on a guy like Byram to live up to his potential. So I would give the Colorado Avalanche, you probably saw my Instagram, I give them an A. I give the Buffalo Sabres still a B+. There was definitely worse deals to make, and I like the fact that they got a young NHLer instead of just like a first-round pick from Mittelstadt that could be 27th overall and never play a game in the NHL. Solid work by Kevin Adams, but I do think that Colorado Avalanche win it out more, especially when you tack on top of Sean Walker heading to the Colorado Avalanche in a 5th-round pick for a 2025 first and Ryan Johansson. Obviously, mentioned before, Ryan Johansson was just not really working out in Colorado. These are his 3 most recent seasons. Great on the Nashville Predators 2 years ago. That was when Duchesne had like 88 points. Forsberg had 40 and 40. Yossi had 96. Last year, fell off a decent amount, had an $8 million cap hit. So the Predators said, see you later. And this year has taken another step back, regressing, considering he's getting up there in his early to mid, I think early 30s, right? Yeah, only early 30s. So 23 points in 63 games. That's not even a third line center in the NHL nowadays. So you got to move off him. You move off his $4 million cap hit, and you get a pretty solid second pair defenseman who's having a career year for the most part, only 29 years old. So when looking at it, their defense pairings are pretty fantastic now. I think they have one of the best top fours in the entire NHL. Obviously, Taves, Makar, when they're playing to their best, is no doubt the best pairing in the entire NHL. They haven't really played to exactly their best this season, but now you got either Girard and Manson as your second pair or Girard and Sean Walker. The bottom pair does scare me a little bit with Jack Johnson, but he's really the only weak link. Maybe you go out and get another depth defenseman for this team. But when looking at the Colorado Avalanche, they obviously addressed their two biggest needs, another top second pairing defenseman, as well as that second line center with these two trades upgraded in both facilities, with only giving that 2025 first round pick that's top 10 protected. But let's be honest, the Colorado Avalanche are going to be a high-level contender as well this year. And looking at it next year, now they do have some more money to end up spending on a Casey Mittelstadt. Just very good work by Chris McFarland. I said it at nauseum. He was going to have a fantastic deadline. Right now, he's having a fantastic deadline. Even if he doesn't make any trades, it's going to be hard to top what the Colorado Avalanche did in the span of 10 goddamn minutes. I think they have really looked forward to the future. Only a first-round pick, and Mittelstadt will be there for a long time. It wasn't just an all-in, like, say, 2022 Florida Panthers when they traded for Giroux and Chirot. They gave up Tippett, a first, and a third. No, this was very smart work. Even Sean Walker is probably a rental for Colorado, but the fact that they got rid of the Johansson contract is very big. Moving on, another deal is obviously the Alex Wennberg to the New York Rangers, a 2024 second-round pick, a 2025 fourth that could become a third if Nils Lundqvist gets to 55 points combining the last two seasons. That's not going to happen. So it's a second and a fourth-round pick. And when looking at Wennberg, he's been pretty consistent, about as consistent as it gets the last 3 to 4 years. He's just a solid 35 to 40-ish point guy, a two-way, reliable defensive player. Doesn't really do a ton of goal scoring, especially when you saw those goal totals. He's more of a pass-first guy. But when looking at the New York Rangers, obviously after losing Philip Hedl, it was essential that they do fill that void at the third-line center position, and they didn't really give up that much for a guy like Alex Wennberg that can be an immediate impact guy, one of the better third-line centers in the entire NHL at this point. So I do like this for the New York Rangers, but obviously if this is their only move, it'd be a pretty big failure in terms of Chris Drury. He's going to get judged not by the Alex Wennberg trade. I think we can all agree that's a good trade. It's going to come down to what he does with his top line right wing position. And when looking at the Rangers cap space, they still have $2.9 million in cap space, mainly from the Philip Hedl injury, obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see if they end up going for a Jake Gensel. Obviously, I think if Jordan Eberle's off the table, they would have just done both of those trades. Frank Vetrano is really hard to do now that the Anaheim Ducks, we'll get to it, don't have any other retention spots left. They've used all 3 retention spots. They would need to, I think, get a broker, but considering Vetrano has term left, that'd be tough to find a broker that's willing to eat money for 2 seasons. So yeah, Drury definitely still has his first round pick, still has his prospects. You need to do something with that top line right wing. A third line center for this team is not going to be the difference probably between a Stanley Cup and losing in the first round, but an elite first line right wing to actually have that top line as Zibanejad and Kreider produce at 5-on-5. It is essential. It is absolutely essential. So Drury, a nice little primer for the New York Rangers, but at the end of the day, he'll be judged by his first line right wing. And then lastly, we got Adam Henrique heading to the Edmonton Oilers for a first round pick. It's a first-round pick in 2024 and a fifth-round pick that can become a fourth-round pick if the Edmonton Oilers, I believe, make the Stanley Cup final. There's some condition on it, kind of irrelevant. I like this move, obviously, for the Edmonton Oilers. They overall boost their top 9 talent. Adam Henrique, for the most part, has been a pretty reliable around 50 to 55 point pace guy, really good both ways. So when looking at the Edmonton Oilers lines, I think he can slot potentially on that second line, maybe in place of Evander Kane on the left side. Evander Kane has been pretty disappointing for the most part, and definitely potentially on that third line. And then for the first time in a long, long time, the Edmonton Oilers would actually have a functional third line. I think like of the McDavid era, I can't remember a time where I was actually impressed or somewhat nervous of their third line. It has always just been such a top six heavy team, and for the most part, just a two-man team. And they finally have some forward depth, especially after the Corey Perry pickup. He's been very good, as well as now getting a guy like Adam Henrique. Carrick is whatever. He's just kind of a depth guy. When looking at it, we knew that the Edmonton Oilers were going to be trading their first-round pick. Did I think they were going to go for a better player than Adam Henrique? Yes. Did they probably not want to pay a premium of 2 first-round picks? I can understand why, considering this isn't their one run. As long as they have McDavid and Draisaitl, they're going to be competitive every single year. So maybe you don't trade the 2 first equivalent for a Jake Gensel, a Pavel Buchnevich. This is a very solid deal in a vacuum. I wish the Edmonton Oilers did maybe a little bit more, but overall, I would give the Edmonton Oilers a B+, the Anaheim Ducks an A-. Obviously, for the Ducks, Henrique's 34. You weren't going to sign him to like a 2-year, $5 million contract to take up minutes in your top 6. Most of your young guys are NHL ready, so just let them flourish. Maybe keep a Frank Vetrano who's still in his prime, who still has prime years left. But if you can get a first-round pick for Adam Henrique, I really like the idea of that. I think they should probably package a first and a second-round pick to move up in this draft, considering, in my opinion, this draft does kind of fall off around like the 15th, 16th overall. So for the Ducks right now, get that more quality than quantity. They have enough prospects in the system. Be aggressive at this year's draft. Maybe trade up. But overall, I think these were all pretty, for the most part, win-win trades. In the morning, we obviously had the Oilers kind of get fleeced just because of the no movement clause. Every single team in these deals did very solid for themselves, got cleared their objective of the deadline for the most part. So let me know in the comments, what do you think was the best deal of this afternoon? What do you think was the worst deal? Not counting the Tarasenko to Florida one. And I'll be seeing the next one probably soon, considering there's more deals to come.